Cake pops are a common item that you'll see a lot of hobbyist bakers make, whether it be for parties or for a gift or just for something to post to Instagram. As you may already know, I'm no professional or expert baker, so I already find cakes hard to make / decorate, and I don't think cake pops are more difficult or even less difficult than cake. They're just different and tedious, I guess I would say. But I'm going to show you the basic steps of how I made mine this time. Starting with the cake itself, and a lot of people say to just use cake mix for this because you're going to break it up anyway. But since this is a cooking channel, of course I'm going to make it from scratch. This is easy to mix by hand, but even easier in a stand mixer, so that's what I'm going to use. Starting with 85 grams or 6 tablespoons of softened butter, and then I'll add in 1 cup or 200 grams of granulated sugar. Cream those together for a couple of minutes on high speed until they're fluffy. Then I'll add in a mixture of 1 egg plus 1 egg yolk, 1 egg yolk at a time. This will be beaten on high speed for about 3 to 4 minutes to whip some air into this. Then I'll bring together my dry ingredients, which starts with 180 grams or 1 1/4 cups of cake flour. You can definitely use all-purpose flour, but I just like using cake flour in cakes for obvious reasons. Then I'll add in 3 grams or a half teaspoon of salt, 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 3 grams or a half teaspoon of baking soda. Just gonna kind of mix that by hand for a few seconds so it's even. Then I'll dump half of that into my stand mixer bowl and mix that on low, only until it's just incorporated. You don't want to overmix the flour. Then I'll add in all of my wet ingredients so that I can still finish with the other half of the dry. This is going to be 50 grams or a 1/4 cup of neutral oil. I'm using canola, 80 milliliters or a 1/4 cup of whole milk, and then 113 grams or a half cup of sour cream. I add this to most of my cakes for a little bit of acidity and richness. Mix that slightly as well until it's evenly distributed, and then you can finish with the other half of the dry ingredients. That gets mixed on low again until just incorporated. Finally, I'll add in a little splash of vanilla and incorporate that. Now I'll grab a 9-inch cake pan which I've sprayed with baking spray and then sprayed with baking spray and then added a little parchment circle to the bottom. Lusciously pour in your cake batter and make sure it's level all around. I give it a few taps on my countertop just to pop any air bubbles inside, and then that gets loaded into a 350F or 180C oven for about 30 minutes. You can start checking at 25 minutes to make sure the toothpick test passes. Once it comes out clean, you know you're done, which mine wasn't clean the first time, so I let it go a few more minutes. Just take that out and lay it on a wire rack to come fully to room temperature. You can't have hot cake for the next step, so be patient here. You can use this time to whip up a simple vanilla frosting. I did this in advance and froze it, but you can do whatever you want. Back into my stand mixer bowl, I'm adding 113 grams or 1 stick of softened butter. Again, just briefly whip that with the whisk until it's broken up. I just add a tiny pinch of salt and then 240 grams or 2 cups of powdered sugar. Then you just need a splash of vanilla and then about a tablespoon of heavy cream or milk. Start mixing slowly so you don't make a mess, and then you can turn it to high speed until it's evenly incorporated. And that's literally it, a super simple vanilla frosting. You can opt for store-bought in this case as well, it doesn't really make a big difference. Back to your cake, once it's fully cooled on that wire rack, you can dump it into a bowl, and then I just use a couple of gloved hands to crumble it up. Very therapeutic and satisfying. We're then going to add in a little bit of our frosting. This is one to serve as flavoring, but also as some moisture to bind up this dry, crumbly cake. You can definitely overdo it though, which is why I only start with a few scoops of the frosting. Mix that together and then see if you're going to need some more, which I did. I added a little bit at a time until I was comfortable with the consistency. You're basically just looking for this to be able to stick together in one mass, but if you go too far, it will fall apart on the sticks, so be careful. I probably used like 3/4 of the frosting recipe that I made here. Now comes the first tedious part, which is separating this into individual balls. I used a scale and went about 30-gram pieces here, but you don't have to be accurate because you're not going to cook anything else in this recipe. Just kind of roll those up in your hands and then place them on a wax paper or parchment paper lined baking sheet. You're going to need to chill these for at least an hour before the next step, but I went overnight. Keep them under some plastic wrap so they don't dry out. Now on the next day, I'm going to get ready to coat these in their chocolate outer shell. The best thing to use for this is melting chocolate. It's pre-tempered, so it's going to harden at room temperature, which is what you want. But if you want to temper your own chocolate for this recipe, then be my guest. I'm just going to do half brown chocolate on the outside and the other half white chocolate. Working with one color at a time, I'm going to drop a handful of chocolate into a small bowl. You don't need to guess how much you're going to use at this point because you're going to be adding more and heating it more as time goes. I also add a couple of tablespoons of coconut oil just to make it a little shinier. Go into your microwave at half power for about 30 seconds at a time until it's melted to your liking. Just pull it out and stir every time because you're trying to distribute that heat. Chocolate can burn very easily, so you're trying to just get it to the melting point and no further. So once there, our first step is to coat these cake sticks in the chocolate. It's going to help them better adhere to the cake balls later. So I'll grab my cake balls from the fridge and then dunk the stick into the chocolate and right into the cake ball. You only need to go about halfway or a little past halfway inside. That chocolate should immediately harden in the cold cake and you can set it aside and repeat with the rest. I got 30 cake balls out of this recipe, by the way. I'm doing 15 of this dark chocolate and saving the other 15 for the white. Now at this point, I would pop the chocolate back into the microwave for 10 seconds on half power. just trying to maintain it at that melting point so it doesn't harden too much. Now for each cake ball, I'm going to tilt the bowl so the chocolate kind of pools up on one side, and then just gently dunk the cake ball in and twirl it around until you get full coverage. Try to get it to where the chocolate comes in contact with the chocolate that's already hardened on the stick, and then just drip off the excess. It should harden pretty quickly because the cake balls are cold. You can place these onto some styrofoam or a cardboard box with holes, but I bought these little cake pop stands and I'll link below everything I used for this recipe. Just do be aware that since the cake balls are cold, they're going to quickly cool off that melted chocolate, so you're going to need to make trips back to the microwave every 2 or 3 cake balls. You're also going to need to frequently add more chocolate wafers as you run out. So some of these cake balls I'm going to decorate later with some more melted chocolate, so I'm going to let those harden, but some I want to put some sprinkles on, so I have some various sprinkles in my pantry. Those will need to be added while the chocolate is still wet, so immediately. Do your best to store the unused cake balls and the finished cake pops in your fridge so that they don't melt, and once you finish with the dark chocolate, it's on to the white chocolate. You're going to repeat all these steps with the white chocolate and add sprinkles to the ones that you want to before they harden. I did let my chocolate harden too much in some cases before putting it back into the microwave, so you'll see that some of these came out with some coagulated chocolate, which is not the prettiest. Once you've finished all your first chocolate layers on all 30 cake pops, you can be done here. You could just do sprinkles on all of these, but I wanted to take it one step further and add one more layer of chocolate to some of these. So I bought these colored melting chocolates, which I bought pink and blue. Both of them came as blocks like the white chocolate, which was great. I tried to shred this up with a paring knife, which took forever, but whatever. You don't need much of this. You can just heat it the same way as you heated the other chocolate in the microwave. And then I'm going to grab a small Ziploc bag and try to feed this into the corner. I didn't want to waste a whole piping bag for this because I'm just using a small amount. Just cut a tiny slit here, which I cut too big, and you'll see that in a second. You have to act quickly because this will harden pretty quickly. Just kind of drizzle streaks of this across as many cake pops as you want. Mine are not the prettiest because my hole was too thick and because I'm not steady with my hands. But you get the idea. You can make this whatever you want. I'm also going to repeat the process with the blue chocolate and just drizzle that across. You can see I went a little thinner here, which looks nicer. And now your cake pops are officially done. I would throw these back into the fridge to fully set, but they're ready to serve or package up for gifting or whatever you're going to use them for. It's just a neat little artsy project in the kitchen. It's just as good as a slice of cake, but easier to serve and more fun to eat. I didn't film a full-on taste test for this because there wasn't much to say. The nice crunch on the outside with the chocolate is really satisfying, and the soft gooey cake in the middle is just delicious. No surprises there. But you don't need to be an expert to make these. They might not look the prettiest like mine, but it is fun and people will appreciate you for trying to make them something nice. But that's it for me today. I appreciate you watching. Thank you all for being here. Be blessed, and I'll see you next time.